You really trying to fight for this country? I mean, these going to war, but ain't got nothing to do with it.
And no different on the south side. They don't put girls on the front line anyway.
The army, though, Joe? For real?
Now, there are two character story arcs in Raising Kanan where we know how their stories end, Kanan and Duke. But the beauty of Raising Kanan is, they're able to give us a full origin story, the full backstory of how Kanan became the Kanan we saw on Power, how Duke became the cold-hearted dirty cop from DC, and the showrunner Sasha Penn has previously said that they're telling a story. Both Kanan and Duke are products of the people, family and environment they grew up around, so every season is a building block for both. Each season we get to make more and more sense of around how they became the Kanan and Duke that we became accustomed to. So with that being said, in this breakdown we're going to be running through Jukebox's story arc in a bit more detail, how they finish with the story in season 3, and also generally what it means for a character, her relationships, and her future in Raising Kanan season 4. Now, just as a very quick recap, Jukebox was introduced as a police officer in season 3 of Power in Washington DC, but we quickly learned that despite having a badge, she wasn't one of the good cops, which actually followed a common theme that we've seen across the Power universe, this duality with characters living two lives. However, she wasn't just a dirty cop, she was also the cousin of Kanan Stark, who helped nurse him back to full health after he was almost killed by Ghost. Ironically, the older Kanan's narration at the end of season 3 is something that also applied to this particular situation. When you try and get rid of someone, at least make sure they're gone, which is something Ghost failed to do, and then we all know what followed. We can even make a very good argument to say that Kanan did eventually win the game of Power by manipulating Ghost's son against him. But despite them being blood related, the connection between Kanan and Duke really did feel cold and broken. You know, there really was this lack of affection and love that we've seen a lot in Raising Kanan. And let's not forget what Kanan said about Duke in season 1.
Cause you never knew it harder than Jukebox. And I ain't never loved nobody harder neither.
Nobody loved Duke more than he did, but this love and affection was replaced with a very cold relationship, as if both of them really went through a lot of dark moments in their past.
Sean was a pawn. You sacrifice pawns for the greater good.
From what we know of from Kanan, he was a liar and a manipulator just like his mom Rock, but the one person he couldn't lie to was Jukebox. She saw through his bullshit in season 1, and then she saw through it again in Power, along with delivering one of the coldest lines. You know, there is a reason why I thought she was one of the coldest in Power, and why I still stand by it, even though we've only seen tough Duke in glimpses. You know, everything that she's been through in her early years, from initially feeling rejected by her father for who she was, being abandoned by her mother when she was a baby, to feeling rejected by her when they did reconnect, broke Duke. She then lost Kenya, lost Nicole to the drugs cooked by Kanan, along with a lot more trauma. Everything that she's been through and will continue to go through will break her piece by piece. However, there were a couple of things that did give her a reason to smile.
You go and do what you gotta do.
I can hear you singing from outside. Mother girls should just stay the hell home because they don't stand a chance.
Her relationship with Marvin in season 3 was one, and we're gonna get back around to that in just a moment, but Duke loved singing, so much so she was reminiscing back in Power about how good she was, and how she actually got her nickname as Jukebox.
When I was a kid, I knew all the songs on the radio. I could imitate anybody.
Oh, are you good?
I was better than good. I was great.
Now, for majority of season 3, Duke was at a bit of a crossroad. We could tell she wanted to continue singing because this was a happy place, but she was also done with this life in Queens, especially after Detective Burke's death, so she saw joining the military as her way out. We saw her approaching Sargent Healy and discussing different roles that were on offer with one of the recruiters, but nothing that Duke fancied at that moment in time. Meanwhile, she did end up getting a big break in music when she was chosen as one of 3 girls to form a new girls group called Butta. But it was only when she got that lead role and when she fought her way to practice to defend that role did she make up her mind. This is what she wants. She wanted to go all in on singing and make it happen.
And if you can find that happiness in the army, go find it. But if it's here singing on that stage, do that. Grab that. Be that. Because all I want for you is to find your joy.
Duke and Rock have always had that special kind of relationship that goes all the way back to when Marvin did his bid in Elmira. They used to stay up and have their girly talks, and very rarely do we see Rock smile the way she does when she's with Duke. You can also tell all she wants for Duke is to be happy, whether it's singing or whether it is with the army. Now, she took Rock's advice on board. She grabbed that opportunity and made it hers. She owned that stage along with Aisha and Crystal, in their first performance at the mall, and everything was going as well as it could have until this moment when Agent Tanner strolled in. In my breakdown for episode 10, I said his timing couldn't have been any worse because this was Duke's moment. It was a dream that he was fucking around with, and all he had to do was wait until she was done and maybe catch her at a different time. Unfortunately, he didn't, and I do think this contributed towards the downfall of Butta, although it wasn't exactly 100% confirmed in episode 10. But one thing we can be sure of is, you can't hide or run from your family's sins.
None of us ever make a clean escape from our fucked up families. You think you get out okay, but then once you're in the clear light of day, you see all the scars, and those scars never go away.
So even though I do disagree with the timing of Agent Tanner coming into question Duke, this is something I do agree with. It's also why I do feel Duke will eventually have to reinvent herself away from the Thomases, one of the 48 laws of power, and maybe this also gives us a hint as to why she could eventually change her surname from Thomas to Ganner. She needs to dissociate herself from her family and maybe reinvent herself if she wants to break away and be her own person. For example, for argument's sake, let's just say Duke's career did take off with music. She signs a deal with a record label. Everything was going plain sailing smooth. You know, she's this big star and her name is up in lights. But then you get a nosy journalist who digs into her past and finds that her family has ties to criminal organizations. Imagine the media, the headlines, and the carnage that this would cause. And we only have to look at a couple of real life examples. You know, any celebrity that does something wrong, hop onto Twitter and see how fast that news does spread. So just like Tommy once said to Ghost, no pictures. They have to keep a low profile because they were drug dealers. They do what they have to do. They ice who they have to ice. For Ghost, to be a legit businessman, we also saw how he had to clean up those who could associate him as Ghost. So again, Duke's only option to break away is go to the military and eventually reinvent herself by changing her surname and move to DC. Whether we actually get to that part of the story in Raising Kanan, who knows? You know, it honestly depends on how many seasons the writers do have in mind. Now, just before we get to Duke potentially joining the military, one person who she's grown very close to in season 3 is Aisha. She was originally with Kanan, but she never realized that she had feelings for Duke, because at the end of the day, very similar to Kanan, Duke, Famous, and Crystal, they're all just young teenagers, finding their own identities and who they are in real time. And maybe if Duke hadn't been through all the trauma that she's been through with her moms in season 2, losing Nicole in season 1, and so on, I do think we'd be sitting here and discussing a very different relationship between the two. But just like Agent Tanner said, those scars run deep, and I'm sure that many of us have been where Duke is. Maybe not going through the trauma that she has, but scars of our own, where we then put up a brick wall against anybody who tries to get close to us. In essence, this is what I feel Duke was doing at this moment in time. 1. To protect Aisha, and secondly, because she was done being let down, and also having her heart broken. But with that being said, over to Duke potentially joining the military.
When y'all came to my school, you said you'd help us pick a career and train us and all that so we could get good jobs later. Sign me up for that.
For Duke to join the army to feel safe does sound crazy, but it does go back around to the introduction of my video. Duke is a product of the environment she's grown up in, and Queens is a war zone in itself. Even though she's not in the game her family's in, when she leaves her home, she doesn't know whether she's going to return, because who knows if she's going to get caught up in her family's mess, just like in this situation. Now if she does join, which I think she will, then I can see season 4 starting with a bit of a time jump, with Duke returning maybe after 6 months or a year, and when she does return, she's going to be even more badass than she already is. We all know how tough Duke is and what she's capable of, but joining the army, that's only going to make her even stronger and colder. Again, circling back to the older Duke in power, there was a reason why her face was just stone cold, with zero emotion. She'd been broken piece by piece, where there was nothing more left to break. So going to the military for a short period, it really will add an extra layer to her character. Now what I would personally love to see in season 4 are brief flashbacks or specific moments of her in the army in season 4 to paint the picture of what she went through, or even better, Anika Rose, who played the older Jukebox, narrating a few scenes to explain what she went through. I do feel that would bring us a lot more closer to understanding how she became the character we saw on Power, but that's just something I would like to see. I'm not too sure whether the writers would go down that route. Now I did mention Duke and Rock have a special kind of relationship, but no doubt, we've also seen Duke's relationship grow with Marvin. From rejecting her in season 1, we saw a complete transformation. He was there for Duke to lean on, he became Duke's biggest supporter, and he was also there for Duke like a father, how he's supposed to be. However, interestingly, she hasn't told Marvin that she's thinking about joining the military. She's only told Aisha, Kanan, and Rock. So whether Marvin knows or approves, who knows? Maybe she's thinking Marvin will convince her to stay. But I don't think she'd go without telling her father, but who knows? But what happens with Marvin? I think when we talk about Jukebox being broken piece by piece, I genuinely feel like Marvin is the last one. If and when something happens to Marvin, that really will be the end of Laverne Thomas. These rare smiles and rare happy moments that we see from Juke is gone, and it is going to be replaced with this. Now again, I don't think it will be in season 4, but I do think that does have to happen for Juke's character development, and it is the final piece in my opinion. So that's the breakdown of where we currently are with Jukebox's story arc, how it seems like she's on the way to the military, and how it will contribute towards this character we saw on Power. But there is still a long way to go, and who knows if we're going to get all the answers we're looking for in the story of Raising Kanan. But the floor is now yours in the comment section. Drop all your thoughts and predictions down below for Juke's character for season 4. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.